Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America website, thisweekinamerica.us. Philp Comella is a lawyer, visionary futurist, host of the popular radio show Conversations Beyond Science and Religion podcast at webtalkradio.net. His book, The Collapse of Materialism, Visions of Science, Dreams of God, is a culmination of literally decades of work committed to developing a new, incredible scientific paradigm to unify the physical world of science and the metaphysics of religion. And he's with us on This Week in America. Philp, welcome to the program. Great to have you with us.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me on, Rick. It's great being here.
Oh, it's our pleasure. And this is such a challenging book. It's a very important book to read. It will change your view on a lot of things. Let's start by where you started the book, which is a great place to start because you do sort of the analogy, we're on a rocket ship ride. Explain that, because this really is going to define where we're going to go during the course of the program.
Yeah, I think that, first of all, I started the book in college as a college paper. And I just think that when you sit back, we are basing our lives upon an erroneous or wrong-headed world model, and that model is materialism. The view that ultimate reality is a thing, that mind came from matter, that there's no connection between our inner selves, our soul, our spirit, our beliefs, and the outer world, that we are only machines. And I always knew this could not be true. And so I've devoted my life into coming up with the arguments why that's not true, to make it credible, to make it powerful, to use my legal skills to make the best argument against this materialistic worldview possible, because our world right now is being led by materialism, and that's the spaceship. But we only have one life, and there's only one world, and I think we need to change the navigation system, change the direction we're heading, and point it towards a more promising world outlook.
You mentioned your background as a lawyer, and that really comes out as you're reading the book, The Collapse of Materialism, the impeccable logic, the meticulous research. You use a lot of endnotes. These are just not theories you're throwing out there. In fact, you come up with theories, and you either test them, they're valid, and you move on, or if they're invalid, you strike them and you go on to something else.
Yeah, and I think that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be credible. There's a lot of folks who are in the mainstream who would look at books like this sort of as potentially being quackery, off limits, an outlier, like another book on the paranormal or spirituality or something. I wanted to put together something that was rooted in history, rooted in intellectual history, that is based upon what scientists have said, what their theories say, the great thinkers in history that have shaped the way we think about the world, that all these folks, they support changing our mindset, changing our worldview. And put differently, I think we are headed towards a scientific revolution, and this one's going to be a revolution, I hope, that actually includes everything, all human experience, such as spirituality, the paranormal, the supernatural, and not just the particles and forces.
Well, so, you say you should take nothing on faith, reason, and experiment your way to what you find to be the truth.
Right, exactly. I'm a big believer in the scientific method. This is, the method whereby you make an educated guess or an hypothesis, you test it, and if it withstands testing and questioning, it may become a theory. The problem that science has right now is that they've not subjected the foundation to their worldview, which is materialism, to the scientific method. They have assumed, without questioning, that the world is a machine, that we came from a big bang, we descended from apes, and that there's no room for spirituality, for God, for hope, for dreams in our world. And so if you take this apart, if you collapse materialism, what you have at the end of the day is a mind-centered, a mind-first worldview, which is really older than materialism. That's where the great religion, such as Eastern religion, started and still has a mind-first worldview. And those of us in the West have forgotten about it. that there's another way to look at the world, which is mind first.
You're listening to This Week in America. Our guest on the program is Philp Comella. His new book is called The Collapse of Materialism, Visions of Science, Dreams of God. His website is thecollapseofmaterialism.com. You can go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and link onto that. You mentioned the Big Bang Theory. Let's talk about that, because so many people just sort of take for granted they've lived it, they've heard it all their lives. The Big Bang is really the only logical explanation. Talk about the Big Bang and how that fits into your thinking.
Well, I think you put it right, that most people accept the Big Bang as true.
Right. We don't challenge it. We accept it.
They don't understand it. Right. They don't understand it. And it comes down to this, that leading scientists say the world began with the Big Bang, therefore it did. That's about the extent of the reasoning that goes into it. And so, to change our outlook, we sort of have to take these opinions, these theories down to ground zero. And if they're true, then they'll remain standing. But my view is that the Big Bang is really a metaphor for creation. That old age question that we had when we were kids. Well, how did all this stuff come from nothing? How is that possible? The answer, science does not have an answer. They didn't have an answer when we were kids, and they still don't have an answer. It's a big assumption. They assume that all this stuff came from nothing, which I don't think is possible. Then they have to find a way for this exploding debris to all of a sudden assemble itself into a mathematically ordered universe. Now, how is that going to happen? How is that going to happen? And this is a radical thought, Rick. I'm not going to say that this isn't radical, but to change the world, as Einstein said, you've got to approach it from a different level of consciousness. And so I do attack the Big Bang. I don't think the Big Bang is true. I think it's a metaphor, a model. I think it's better to look at the world as an explosion of creativity than a explosion of dead and dumb matter. And so that's the kind of mindset we need to change. And, I just read in the paper a couple days ago that most people, in fact, don't believe in the Big Bang. So I think that maybe I'm not alone. It's just that I get into it and I say, well, this is why it doesn't make any sense.
It's interesting. Even if you think you believe it, when you stop and think it through, as you said, you have questions.
Right. And it's not so much as usually the alternative to the Big Bang is Genesis, the book of Genesis. But the world should not be a multiple choice exam where there's only two answers to the exam. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, that's sort of the dichotomy we're in right now. And this is what scientists do all the time. They say, well, to question the Big Bang, you have to give away your brain and your reasoning power and accept the Bible as true. What I'm saying is that let's take a step back. Maybe they're both true in a different way. Maybe there's a third choice. Maybe the world did begin with an explosion of creativity from the mind of God, and we are really living the dream of God. And that, to me, makes so much more sense because it gives meaning both to religion and to science.
The Collapse of Materialism, Visions of Science, Dreams of God. Our guest on the program, the author, Philp Comella. His website is thecollapseofmaterialism.com. Information, of course, at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. The book's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all across the country. Information on his website, and you can link on directly at our website as well, thisweekinamerica.us. Let's talk about the book and how you treat the Bible, how you treat God, how you treat possibly a heaven.
Well, first of all, my objective was to give meaning to the full range of human experience, not to rule things out because they aren't popular, or not to rule things out because some scientists say that they don't make sense or that they're unscientific. I think that the Bible has truth in it. If you look at the Bible as the story of the early dreamers in the mind of God and the story of God, to me, it makes a lot of sense. So I want to give meaning to the Bible. I'm not rejecting it. But one thing you've got to do to go where I'm going with this is that you've got to view God as an evolving creature. That 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, when the Bible was written, that those people were articulating their best understanding of what they thought God was. That was the best they can do. It was poetic, metaphorical. They told a story. And now today, if you ask people, a lot of people say, well, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. People are finding their own way. We're coming to a better understanding of spirit, of God, of all these big terms. We're understanding that it's really a power within us, within nature. And so I think that that's a big advantage my view has, is that I give credence, I give weight and power to religion. I don't reject it. I think it's true. You just have to take a different perspective at it and give it meaning.
You talk about the goal, finding an eternal home. Is that what some of us would call heaven?
Yes, yes. I think that's the beauty of this. I love books with happy endings. I wanted to write a book with a happy ending, okay? And I followed this to its logical conclusion. The logical conclusion being that if we are spirits, if our essence is spirit and not matter, then our goal is to unite in physical form that which is united at the spiritual level. Put differently, we need to make peace. We need to become the family of humankind. And when we combine that dreaming power, the power of spirit, and treat it as a law of nature, like the law of gravity, there is no limit to what we can be individually and no limit to what our world can be. And that, I think, fulfills the dream of there being a heaven on earth. I think that's where this leads. And I wanted to go out there and do it. It was always inside me. I wanted to give it weight, some credibility. I just didn't want it to be a bunch of fancy happy talk. And I wanted to say, folks, maybe this is really good. Go with me on this, because this makes more sense than the theories you're going to be hearing from our leading scientists.
And this, as I mentioned, took you literally decades where you're laying this out, you're testing theories, some are valid, some are not valid, and really took a long time where you were comfortable finally saying, okay, I think I can state this well now. I think I can make my case, make my argument.
Yes, yes. I wrote the first main draft. I wrote it 20 years ago. I went through 20 years of rewriting because I think it's very important to be understood. And so not only am I working this through and trying to figure it out myself, but I'm trying to put it into a form that somebody could understand. And so it has been a lifelong quest. And it's just like they say, it takes longer to write something short than something long.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, if I could make it shorter, I would make it shorter. But I had to cover. I wanted to cover the whole story. I wanted to cover Darwin and the Big Bang, and I wanted to talk about religion and the paranormal. I wanted to put the whole picture together so someone could get the sense that this is the whole package. It's not just, a couple anecdotes here or there about clairvoyance or about life after death or something. I wanted to put the whole picture together, and so it took me, of course, longer than I thought. But here it is. It's in one place, and I'm happy that Rainbow Ridge decided to publish it.
It's challenging. It will change the way you look at the world. It's called The Collapse of Materialism, Visions of Science, Dreams of God. Philp Comella, our guest on the program, his website is thecollapseofmaterialism.com. Information at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. You talk a lot in the book about finding a more peaceful world, a unity of people. Are you hopeful that we'll ever move in that direction, significantly in that direction?
Yeah, I think that is the vision, the dream you got to keep in your mind. Right now, it seems like an impossible goal. On the other hand, people have accomplished things that seemed impossible throughout the entire world history, such as climbing Mount Everest. We are, I think, Rick, I think we're a young civilization. We have a long way to go. You have to set that dream, that vision, as far out there as you can. What gives me hope is my belief that the truth does remain standing, that the truth does have power, that a lot of people are going to question this. Well, it doesn't make any sense. It's too odd. It's too weird. It's too far out. All these kinds of things. But at the end of the day, in my mind, it's going to remain true. And as long as that's the case, then all we wait for is a critical mass, or it takes a village to topple over the materialistic standpoint. And then I hope that we ingrain this mind first, this dream of God mentality, like a law of physics, that the dreaming power becomes the fifth force of nature. When we incorporate that into physical law, into science, now we're in business. And so
How do you want people to take this information? There's probably people who are listening going, yes, so what? I live, I die, life goes on. What has this meant to you? How has this changed you and your perspective of life?
well, I tell people that my book is one of the best examples of the truth of my theories, because I am just a normal guy from Cleveland. And I set a high goal for myself to write this book and to get it published 40 some years ago. And I didn't let anything stop me, and I kept at it. And so if you have that goal and you make steps towards it, then you'll always achieve it. But here's what it does for us. First of all, if the world is mind created, which I think it is, then we are writing our own stories. You could write yourself a story where you become a divine creature. You live longer, you stay younger longer, you're healthier. The placebo effect, we've all heard about that, about the power of belief over physical illnesses. That becomes more powerful. And then when we build up the critical mass of people, we can start changing the world, breaking down the walls that separate us, whether it's religion, race, creed, or scientific beliefs. So the walls, so now we have a definite shining goal at the end of the road that's going to always be there, and it's just waiting for us. It's waiting for the right generation, the right people to not give up the search. So I'm really an idealist, as you could tell, but I think that that's what you got to do. You can't give up. You got to continue going to that goal, because the goal is a better world, a heaven on earth, a happier, healthier, longer life.
What has been the response of the Collapse of Materialism? I mentioned the radio show you do, which is I heard it at webtalkradio.net, a very popular program there. What is the response you're getting? Because so many times we deal in absolutes. Again, we go back to the beginning with the Big Bang and creationism, and it's one or the other. And you're basically saying, what, a little from column A, a little from column B, that may be the truth.
Right. I think most people are having a hard time easily dismissing it, because that's what I was trying to do. I've gotten some positive reviews from folks that are Christians, because it's consistent with a lot of Christianity. I think that the more open-minded of the quantum physicists are seeing the truth here. I haven't gone toe-to-toe yet with the diehard materialists. And to be specific, those would be the Richard Dawkins, the Stephen Hawkings of the world, the Stephen Weinbergs, the leading scientists. But overall, in this genre we're in, this open-minded, this new spirituality, this self-help, self-empowerment, positive thinking, it's providing the feedback I'm getting is that it's providing a background, a foundation, a metaphysics for people to give more value, more weight for all these opinions, such as the law of attraction, that we sort of know are true, but now they have a logical basis to think, hey, maybe I'm just not out of my mind. Maybe there's some truth to all these things, all these positive things that we've heard about through in the New Age, New Spirituality movement. So I'm optimistic.
Got about a minute left in the program. That's interesting. We've talked a couple times about spirituality. Are you finding that we're more receptive now? And I say that because maybe 20, 30 years ago, there weren't that many people that said, I think I am a spirit. I'm not necessarily religious. I am a spiritual person. With the internet, it's real easy to be exposed to different attitudes. If you hear something, you can go online. Somebody hears what you're saying, they want to check you out, and they go online, get information on the book, The Collapse of Materialism. Are we more receptive now to your message?
I don't think there's any doubt that the time is right, because 30 years ago, if you go into the bookstore, there was the Tao of Physics, the Dancing Wooloo Masters, and maybe the Celestine Prophecy. There weren't a lot of books pushing the edges. Now the bookshelves are littered with books that are pushing the edge, whether it's by Dean Radin in the paranormal, or whether it's Amaka Swami, Fred Allen Wolf, Bruce Lipton, Robert Lanza just wrote a book that's pushing the edge. We have more and more people pushing the edge of what we should, of what we can know and what we can be. And I think what it comes down to is that inside all of us, we want something better. We want to be happier. We see that we live in a world of wonder. We need to make something out of it. We can't just settle for being machines who are going to rust away and slide quietly into the grave. So I see times are a-changing, Rick. It's going to take a long time, but I want to put something out there that might accelerate this process.
And as you're reading the book, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but you're basically saying through all of this, keep an open mind. It's not necessarily black or white. There are some grays in there.
Right, exactly. The number one thing is use your brain, use your critical thinking. You know, so many people use their criticism. They levy it against like Obamacare or their football coaches or political leaders. I'm saying use that critical thinking a little bit against the big ideas, against the people that are setting us on this course, on this materialistic course that are guiding our worldview. That's the most important thing, because that is healthy. It allows us to be more open-minded and to be more accommodating to other beliefs. We want to get a discussion. We want to talk about these things, not be afraid to talk about the big questions with an open mind, critical thinking, because with that, I think we find a place where we have common ground, where we can start having a dialogue and stop fighting over our places in line in front of God, or what theory of evolution is the best one. We talk through this stuff and we find common ground where we could unite ourselves.
It's an important book. It's called The Collapse of Materialism, Visions of Science, Dreams of God. Philp Comella has been our guest on This Week in America. His website is thecollapseofmaterialism.com. Book is available all across the country. Information, of course, at Philp's website, and information and a link on our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Fascinating program. Philp, thank you for joining us on the show.
Hey, thanks a lot, Rick. It's been a blast.
Yeah, our pleasure. You're listening to This Week in America, website, thisweekinamerica.us.